Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar presented by GAPABA's Women's Leadership Network. My name is Tina Dorr, one of the co-chairs of the Women's Leadership Network, and with my co-chair, Kayla Chen. We are excited to present. This is our third webinar that our committee's presented this year. If you've attended previous events, you know that our theme has centered around a professional and frankly personal development that you won't necessarily get in your workplace, particularly the topics that are uncomfortable and conversations that you might not necessarily feel comfortable having with your coworkers. And our first event was one of the very few in-person events that we've had this year overall in GAPABA, and it was a workshop on how to advocate for yourself. COVID hit, and we had to pivot and change direction, and our next event was how do you present yourself confidently over professional video communications like this. And who would have thought that that was become so important and such an essential skill nearly 7 months later. We pivoted our signature dinner into a webinar event. We didn't have dinner, we didn't have cocktails, but we had a path-breaking group of women who had reached the pinnacle of their careers, and they told us about how they had really navigated career transitions in reaching the top of their careers. And today, to round out that series, we're going to present on the real-world impact of the pandemic on women attorneys, many of whom are juggling family obligations and have children at home. And this panel is moderated and co-hosted and organized by Winter Wheeler, who is amazing, and I hope that she'll share a little bit about herself. She's a GAPABA member, many of you know her, but she's amazing. I don't know how she does it all. And with that, I'll hand it over to Winter to introduce herself and the panelists.
Hello, everyone, and good evening. Welcome to tonight's program, Womanhood, Parenthood, and the Profession During and Post-COVID. Thank you so much, Tina. That was such a wonderful opening. Thank you. I'm like, oh. There's no magic here in what I do. And so we're all going to talk about that, all of our tips and tricks, right? We've got lots of mamas and working women on our panel. And so with that said, let's go ahead and introduce our esteemed panel. We have Yoon Ettinger. She's Chief Litigation Counsel for Southern Company Gas. Yoon, wait. Betsy Turner, a labor and employment partner at Martenson, Hasbrouck & Simon. Sul Kim, a labor and employment partner at Akerman. Diana Kim, senior labor and employment counsel at Rheem Manufacturing Company. And Dr. Ericka Goodwin. She's a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. She's the CEO of Goodwin Wellness Enterprises and Goodwin Medical Associates. She offers virtual services. Call her, book her. She's amazing. She's also a best-selling author of 4 books. And I am Winter Wheeler. I'm a former civil litigator and now full-time mediator and arbitrator with Miles Mediation. And if you want any of the panelists' contact information, we can make that available in the chat. So I think we will run a video now. That video was amazing, and it was made by, of course, Bonnie Yoon. Bonnie, thank you. Thank you. So we're in the middle of a pandemic. We all know that. I don't really have to tell you that. But I use the term middle in a very hopeful sense. Hopefully we aren't still at the beginning, right? And hopefully we're getting closer to the end. So while we're here to talk specifically about working women and mothers, I want to be clear that I'm being inclusive of caretakers, aunties, grandparents. But I do want to focus on those of us who identify as women and those of us who occupy that stereotypical role of womanhood in American society. So when our courts closed back in March, I, like most people, thought it would be a short pause and we'd all be back up and running again in a few weeks. But here we are, and it's September the 15th. And really, like, I almost can't believe it. But to make sure we know exactly who we have in our audience today, before we really dive into the juicy stuff, we have a poll that we hope you will take with us that will help guide our conversation. So if we can get our poll slides going, that would be amazing. So you should be able to see a poll on your screens. Okay, cool, I can see it. And in a second, I'll be able to see those slides. Here we go. Are you working and are you a primary caretaker of children or charges? Yeah, I am. Panelists, please participate. Unmute yourselves and let's chat. If you work and are a primary caretaker of children that are home the majority of the time, which describes your work situation best? A, I work strictly from home. B, I work some of the time from home. Or C, I work strictly at the office. I'm gonna, you know what? My situation is such that, like, I work in the office. Most of my clients want virtual stuff. So I won't even say I work some of the time from home. I'll just say, let's say I work strictly from home. Most of the time I do. All right. Oh, we have results here. Let's see. So 59% of the audience is working and a primary caretaker of children. Okay. And 71% of them are working strictly from home. Oh, who's surprised there? Not me. Okay. All right. Next up. So if you have a live-in spouse or partner with children / charges that are at home the majority of the time, who is the primary caretaker? Goodness. You know, for me, it goes back and forth, but whatever. Who is primarily responsible for household duties? Not me, not me. I mean, I couldn't do all of that. Are you both the primary caretaker and primarily responsible for household duties? All right, so 77% said that, okay, so if you have a live-in spouse or partner with children that are at home in the majority of the time, who's the primary caretaker? Okay, I said yes to that. Who on the panel said yes to that? 70% of the audience said yes to that. Are you guys raising your hands, panelists? Because okay.
Me.
Okay, because I can't hear anything. All right, awesome. Who's primarily responsible for household duties? Oh, okay. Look at that. Well, that looks pretty good. A little bit better. 65% of the women. All right. Are you both the primary caretaker and primarily responsible for household duties? Yeah, I wish that did not shock me. Yeah, 73%. All right, no surprises there, ladies. But that's why we're having this conversation, right? Okay, so now that we've got our poll results, and I am not surprised, the reality of the pandemic is that many women are working from home at least some of the time, and are doing so primarily with children at home while also taking on the lion's share of the household duties. Hooray for women, right? Okay, so how do we cope and manage all of the stress and all of the extra work? Well, at the start of this isolation period, when we realized it was going to be longer than we thought, we all just had to adjust. So Diana, you and I actually talked about this pretty recently. So I started social distancing on March the 16th, and I will never forget that date. It is emblazoned in my brain at this point. It was right after Atlanta Metro schools closed, and I was devastated. I'm a very
I agree.
person.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I'm a super social person, and so adjusting was really, really hard. So tell us, it's nearly like a confidential conversation here, right? Just this small group and everybody watching on Facebook Live. Tell us about your initial adjustment period, please.
I mean, yeah, just like you, Winter, I would say we all, myself included, went from having, never ending. And I just to give you background, I have two young kids, a first grader and a fourth grader, which if you have kids, that means your weekends are dominated by birthday parties, soccer games, baseball parties, social events. And then for those that don't have kids, you're doing more fun things like going to concerts and dinners, which I miss. But all those things came to a crashing halt, and it was shocking to the system, I would say, for myself and for everyone else involved, which certainly I'm sure is the cause of a lot of people feeling obviously isolated. Isolation, if left kind of without counterbalancing that isolation, can certainly lead to feelings of depression, feeling down. And one thing, I would say from my perspective and my experience, the only thing that you can really do to counteract that is to be social. And what I mean by that is not to go out to parties and not to social distance, because that's very important, obviously, right now during COVID. But I think there are ways to socialize safely. And I can say from my own perspective that technology has, for example, like this Zoom panel is a prime example of using technology to socialize. I know I can speak with my work. I'm an in-house lawyer, and I would say from March 16th, our company did a very good job of transitioning to using technology for work, which opened the door really to allow me to see folks that I've been working with at other parts of the country immediately, which I think has actually helped me build better working relationships at work, because otherwise it was just, kind of a plain phone call to, our California counsel or a Canadian counsel, and now I'm actually seeing them for the first time. So certainly socializing in a way that's maximizing our use of technology. And then, apart from that, I would say that there is a safe way to socially distance and interact with people. Within my community, I would say that we've been able to get out more, just go on walks. And in those walks, it's kind of amazing. I think pre-COVID, you may have seen a couple runners on the street, but nowadays you see blocks of family walking, or at least I do, which is kind of awesome because we stop and we kind of chit chat in ways that we didn't before within our little community. So I absolutely agree. This has been a huge transition for all of us, but rather than kind of let yourself stay in that isolation, which can be, can create a number of other issues, the way to counteract that is to really be social and to get out there in a safe way.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And another thing that you mentioned to me before is that, school has gone back. Mm-hmm. And you're doing remote schooling, as my yes. family is, but you're using a really cool kind of social thing, I
Yep.
guess, the technical term, an educational pod. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's not for everybody. Certainly, people have different, varying degrees of what their comfort level is with interacting with certain, you know, people outside of their home, with other families. But we've been fortunate and have been able to get a tutor to come and help out with the kids. Because one of the things I can absolutely tell you that I learned from the spring when I tried to be a teacher and a lawyer mom is that I can't do it all, surprisingly, or not surprisingly. And if you talk to my kids, they'll tell you I dubbed our springtime class Kim Academy. And Kim Academy did not last long, which is why I had to get someone to help me. So so this fall, we brought in a tutor to help us, and we're working with another family. So we have a bit of a learning pod. Well, fortunately, the other family we know well. You know, we know that we're both trying to be responsible and not, get out to social events, but rather stick to our little network and our little community. And the teacher is able to help guide our kids 3 times a week for a few hours each of those days that we pick. So it's worked out really well for us. I know it's not for everybody. And I can say we're fortunate. We're extremely blessed and fortunate that we even have the opportunity to do that. So that has worked well for us, and it's kept me a little more sane.
Well, that's great. I'm happy for you that worked out. You know, I have less a lower risk tolerance, I guess, is what I'll call. And so we haven't allowed anyone in our house. So it's like me and my husband kind of trying desperately to be the teacher. So I know that Yoon is also trying to teach her kids right now. Yoon, how's that going?
It's a struggle every day. You know, I want to cry every day, but we're getting through it. And, I think my emphasis right now, I'm probably the worst tiger mom in all of Asian history. But at this point, I think I'm more focused on my kids' mental and emotional well-being, as well as me and my husband's mental and emotional well-being. My kids are 4 and 7, so I think they're old enough. Well, I wouldn't say old enough. They're at the age where I think they'll be able to make up, any type of learning deficiencies. And, we work with them at home anyway. So I don't I'm not a teacher either. I don't have those skills. So I'm just trying to help them with this transition. Working from home and really not being able to see their friends. But, for me, what's really helped is embracing the change and being flexible. And I have a quote that I want to share. It's from one of my heroes, Bruce Lee. He said, "Be like water making its way through cracks. Do not be assertive." I don't know if I agree with that. "But adjust to the object and you shall find a way around or through it. If nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves." So I try to be like water every day. I take care of what needs to be taken care of at the moment, and I try to be as flexible as possible. I grew up a perfectionist. I still struggle with perfectionism. I think it's a disease. I try to focus on getting it done and moving forward. I realize that it's not my job to pick up other people's slack. So you know what, if the dishes pile up in the sink, I'm going to pull out some paper plates. If, I can't do everyone's laundry, I'm going to make sure I have clean clothes. But you know what, y'all may have to wear dirty underwear. I mean, you can only do so much, right? It's all about trying to find that balance and trying to do the best that you can, because it is just tough to be a working parent with children at home. So be kind to yourself. And, you may have to negotiate some new rules with your spouse, with your partner, with your children, but do what you need to do to get through it without tearing each other apart, because, the kids are having a hard time. We're having a hard time. We'll get through it, but I hope, it's easier if you're kind to yourself and you give yourself some slack. And I think that's important for your mental well-being.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. You know, I recently wrote an article for Above the Law that talked about how working moms, specifically lawyers, can be exactly what you're talking about. And I love that, like that water analogy. It's amazing. Gonna use that. But giving up those things and not focusing on those things that you really can't change. Focus on the things that you can control and just like let the rest of that stuff go, right? And we can also talk about like building new boundaries, because for me at this time, I've been very blessed and very lucky, so I'm not complaining. But I have been so busy since March that it has just, I mean, it's been insane. Oh yes, that's my article. It's just been crazy. And so I got to the point where I couldn't figure out if I was working from home or living at work, basically. And it was bad, very bad. And even though I was in my house, I wasn't really seeing my family sometimes, or if I was seeing them, it wasn't for like quality time. It was like, hey, let's eat real fast and then let mommy do whatever. And so I had to start building boundaries for, what was going to be appropriate for me to do and when I was going to be working and where I was going to be working. Like I moved my studio and all of these other things. And one person who really helped me a lot with that was Dr. Ericka, who's on our panel. Dr. Ericka, I know you're there. Are you listening to me?
I am. I was just muted.
Dr. Ericka, you and I talk about this a lot, and we talk about building boundaries and making sure we don't take on too much. Can you give us a teeny tiny little nugget of advice there?
I'd say one of the biggest things about boundaries in this context it's two things. One is surrounding yourself with people that have positive energy. So we all know the people that you spend time around them, you enjoy them, you smile. Then you also know the people that if they call your phone, you're looking at it twice to decide if you're going to even answer. Just the sound of their voice makes you tense up, or you just see them come in and you want to walk the other way. So the first thing is just to be able to, this is a time you prioritize spending your time with people that pour into you or that you actually enjoy being around. Now, if it's your kids and your kids get on your nerves, I'm sorry, you can't get rid of them. But if they're people or relationships you have, this is a great time to put enough distance. And as I've said before to Winter, that sometimes there are people that you talk to by text, not by phone. You don't let them call, you control the narrative. The next thing is just being clear on what you can actually get done. Sometimes you have to just prioritize what are a handful of things you can actually get done, and just try to carve out the space you can to do them and relax everything else, because right now it's just hard to be in control of all of it. So you have to manage what you can, but also this is a great time when it comes to relationships to have those boundaries, that there are times where work may fit here, it may not fit in this other space because you have so much to do that you may need to set some boundaries, like this is my work time, this is what I do now. But when that time is over, then I have to switch into family time. And I'm sure some of the moms will talk about that.
Thank you, Ericka. That was amazing. And it's so true. Being able to kind of, if someone's causing you stress and you can't just get rid of them, don't talk to them, text them. But we have a great question here in the Q&A. How can we build boundaries without paying the motherhood tax, being explicitly or unconsciously penalized by mostly male partners? Now, listen, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I'm what's a good word for this? Brash. So,
I think you have to be assertive, right? I mean, look, I am an extroverted introvert. So I'm naturally an introvert around people I know well, people I like. If we have good energy, I'm an extrovert. But, when I first go into any new situation at work, it's socially, I like to stand back. I like to listen. I like to gather information and learn. But I found that, in order to not pay the mom tax and to be taken seriously, you have to advocate for yourself. And, I think that comes over time. Obviously, you have to know your audience. So you have to know your clients. I consider my boss one of my clients. So I'm in-house, I have business clients. But find out what makes them tick and get to know them on that personal level and advocate for yourself, as an employee and as a mom. So obviously your work will always speak for itself, but I think it's up to you to remind them, oh, remember that time we worked on this project and, we did so well on it, but also talk to them about their families and your family as well. That brings that personal touch. And I think once they realize you're juggling all these things, you're a good employee and a good parent, I think, and I hope that you won't be paying that mom tax because you become more like human, more real and touchable to them. So I think you really have to work on developing relationships and using that relationship to further yourself and your career goals.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad that someone brought up the mom tax, because the mom tax is very, very real. We know that studies show that a woman has a baby and she immediately starts to lose income. A man, on the other hand, he has a child and he begins to get raises. Isn't that fantastic? So, one of those things that we can start to talk about, and we're going to talk about a little bit later in our program, is how women as a group, I don't know, let's call it even a monolith, can start to advocate at this point, just because of the circumstances that we're in now, and push for better practices all the way around. But, we're all on the panel, at least a group of attorneys with a lot of flexibility, at least perceived flexibility. And we can do a certain amount of negotiating and making of our own schedules and things like that. But we're all supported by non-lawyers. And for me, I'm an independent contractor. So I have a staff of my own. I have a staff of 2 people, 1 male, 1 female. And yeah, thankfully, I don't know if that's the right word, but the woman that works for me, she is a little bit older. She has adult children. So we're not having any of these issues to deal with, except that I think that I would be a fantastic person to work with if you did have a bunch of children, because I have a bunch of children and it would be fine. But regardless, I think we need to consider the plight of women who don't have the flexibility that the rest of us have. So for all of the people who are supporting us, what do we do for them? So like I said, I work basically nonstop and someone has to support me. But what if that person also has to support their little people during the day? What do we do? Sul, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, so this will be the little bit of the legal part of today's webinar, but the options that are available to employees really depend on the size of your employer. So if your employer has at least less than 500 employees, then they are subject to this law called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, or I simply call it FFCRA. So under that law, the employer is required to provide up to 12 weeks of paid sick leave and emergency family and medical leave to eligible employees with qualifying reasons. And they are paid leave, which is great for employees. So for those who work for employers who are considered large, because they have at least 500 employees, then unfortunately, they're not subject to this FFCRA. However, based on my experience, those large employers have their own form of paid sick leaves that are available to employees. So I encourage everyone to take advantage of FFCRA or the company's paid sick leave. And today, our firm came out and announced a flexible work schedule for our staff. They said because in consideration of a lot of staff members working from home and who have caretaker or childcare needs, they decided to implement flexible work schedule, and they asked all the attorneys to work with their staff. So I think it's great, and I think a lot of companies are definitely thinking proactive ways to help their employees cope during this period and also retain good employees. But I do want to highlight two questions for the audience today that is related to the remote learning and childcare under the FFCRA. So one of the common frequently asked questions that we get is this: can an employee take FFCRA paid leave if her child's school remains open, but she decides to keep her child at home out of concern for COVID-19? And unfortunately, the answer is no. The employee can only take FFCRA leave if the school is closed. What if you have an option of a mixed hybrid, 3 days in school, 2 days in remote? Then when the school is closed for your child because your child is in remote, then you can take FFCRA leave during those 2 days. Another question that we get a lot is, can you take a FFCRA paid leave intermittently while teleworking? It makes sense for a lot of moms because you can start your day, get your kids set up 9 to 10, and then you work 10 to 12, and you take leave again by giving them a lunch break from 12 to 2, and then go back to work. Can you do that? Is that a possibility? And the answer is yes. So if you are teleworking and if your employer agrees that you can take intermittent leave, then you can definitely do that. So talk to your employer, and as long as you come up with an agreement, such as I'm going to be working 90-minute increments, or I'm going to be working from 9 to noon and then take leave for the rest, those options are all available. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and talk to your HR or any other person at your company so that you are aware of what options that are available to your staff members that support you.
Yeah, that's great information, Sul, on the FFCRA, and I deal with this every day like you. But I think what we're seeing is that despite this law, women are opting out of the workforce right now at rates we have never seen before. And the FFCRA is extremely limited in what it actually can and does do to provide for accommodations for women who may be primary caretakers and may have to stay at home. For example, as you explained, if you make the voluntary choice to stay home and to keep your children out of school because maybe you have a high risk member of your family, or you just wanted to make that decision, that wouldn't apply to you. It doesn't apply to employers who are larger. And most importantly, it's limited to 12 weeks. We have now been in the pandemic for, oh my gosh, 7 months. And so there have been individuals who've had their children out of school well over that. And that law is no longer protecting those individuals. And we're reaching a point where it truly is having a disparate impact on women. And as you saw from the poll, 71% or so of this group of our attendees and panelists are the primary caregivers and are working from home. So that is a huge difference from the alternative, the 30% that I happen to fall into because of some special circumstances at home, but that hasn't always been the case. That's pandemic specific because my husband's in the restaurant business in airports. So we've had to transition our roles a little bit during the pandemic. But I think this is all to say, my hope is that the pandemic and the number of women self-selecting out of the workforce can serve as motivation to galvanize our legislators and lawmakers to do something about the childcare issues in our country. We are so far behind the rest of the world, and it's not a personal problem. You know, childcare is not a personal problem. It is a societal problem. And I think perhaps a silver lining of the pandemic may be for folks to realize that on a grander scale. And I hope it does lead to some change.
Yes, I love that. Absolutely. I think that this could definitely be that, Betsy. It could be what really prompts us to push for change, because this pandemic, if nothing else, it has shown us the fissures in our society, in the cracks in the foundation of our society. And it has shown that our society, our economy, if they function on the backs of women and they rely on the labor of women, the labor at home, the free labor at home, and of course the paid labor in the workforce. And we don't have social policies in place to support those women in times like these. We don't have social policies to support teachers. We don't have social policies to support moms, when every other industrialized nation in the world does in fact have those. So is now the time to move forward and to go toward those policies. Does anyone on the panel want to talk about that?
I love this topic, so I'll jump in, and anyone else, please feel free to jump in as well. You know, I think that, yes, absolutely, we need laws that provide better, more paid parental leave, not only for women, but for men, and not only for those with children, but, you know, for everybody, because there's a, you know, growing elderly population. My parents recently moved to Atlanta, retired down here, and I'm going to be the one that's going to be taking care of them and helping them out in addition to having children. So, you know, this is not just something that affects people with, you know, kids. So yes, we absolutely do need those laws, but I think we also need to talk to our employers about it. Because the more employers that get on board, I think the more momentum there will be to get these types of laws passed. So use this time, and I think this is the perfect time to talk to your employers about, you know, flexible work schedules. I know my company, we have less sick days, and we've kept up our productivity. So I think it's a great, those are great facts to bring to the table when, you know, you are lobbying for that flexible work schedule after we get out of the pandemic, because it can be done, and they know it can be done. So really, what's the excuse going to be? But I also think it starts at home. So, you know, I think you have to constantly be aware of what you're doing, how much you are doing, and ask for help, whether it's from your partner, your spouse, your children, your parents. Ask for help and, you know, negotiate that division of labor. And it's going to be, you know, it's going to change. My division of labor in our house was different when the pandemic started. We did have some remote schooling, but then after school, that schooling ended, it shifted again. And now that we're back at school, it's shifting once more. So, you know, things are going to change. I think you have to change the rules, the division of labor in your house along with it. And, you know, you've got to be a team. And sometimes I think we as women are afraid to ask for help, and we feel like we need to be the ones doing the dishes, the laundry, getting the kids ready, setting them up, and all that, you know. And honestly, I don't know if the men just don't think about it, or they think, oh, you want to do it, and maybe you do, but that's one of those things where you have to practice letting go, you know, get that help, get other people involved, because you can't do it all. You're going to burn yourself out, and then you won't be any good to yourself, your family, or your employer. So I think there needs to be change on all levels.
I agree with you. I think that we definitely need to work, you know, within our homes to make sure that the people that we live with are supporting us in our careers and making sure that we have me time and that we can decompress and all of that. A lot of people are not, unfortunately, able to do that, but I think that's a different webinar, frankly. But there's a lot happening, and we need to support each other in every aspect as women. And I think that what's most important is that there's a recognition, I think, amongst us, and no judgment, really. What do you guys think about that? I think a lot of what we see on social media, Facebook, a lot of that, it's very glossy and pretty and perfect. And it makes a lot of people nervous to speak out and to say anything at all, like, hey, my life's not perfect, what am I doing wrong? I try not to do those things. I speak up all the time. I'm like, hey, things are not perfect over here, not by a long shot. And I think that by doing that, we open up the doors for other people to say, hey, I need help over here too. And I don't know, I feel like that's a helpful thing for people, which is another reason that this webinar is happening. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think, Winter, I'm not embarrassed to admit therapy has been awesome for me in the past. And I know my anxiety levels have probably never been higher, and you don't talk about that every day, but the pandemic has not been fun for, maybe there's some silver linings, but for a lot of us, it hasn't been fun. And I think we're going to be feeling, the effects of that for a long time. So I encourage you guys to look up Dr. Ericka or your therapist and really take advantage of that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think as lawyers who have such busy schedules, we don't do that enough.
Oh my God, yes, I agree. I think, when we talk about me time and self-care and wellness, we don't make sure that we get enough of that time. I know that I never did. I did, as if it's past tense. I don't. So I do. I talk with a therapist for an hour a week. It is not enough. And I'm not even willing to go, to take the time to drive to an office. So I talk to her on the phone. That's that's how ridiculous I am. So yes, I've shared that now. But Dr. Ericka, could you talk to us a bit about maintaining self-care and our emotional and mental well-being?
So you all have brought out so many great points. I was like, well, I might not have a lot to say if I make it down, because there are a couple things that roll in together. So I think one of the hugest things for anyone, but especially a group like all of us, is being able to ask for help. And asking for help comes in so many different ways, because there's this societal expectation that we do everything and manage everything. And then also, as Winter has said, that women tend to be really good at stuff. So it's hard when you might be able to do this better than someone else, or you want it done just right, to relinquish that control. So one of the things I highly encourage is there are so many levels of ask for help. One level goes towards what Yoon said earlier, which is revisiting the division of labor and roles in the house. And that doesn't just include your partner, that can also include if there are adults in the house. It also can include children, to have everyone help out and be a part, because things have shifted, and a lot of times the responsibilities are very different than they were pre-pandemic. The next thing is looking at what kind of things can you actually get off your plate. Naturally, each person has a different idea of what they're comfortable with as far as people coming near them. But if there's anything you can outsource and you can work it in your budget, that this is the time where it might come in handy to have your groceries delivered, or have valet dry cleaning if you have to, be business on the top while your pajamas and leggings on the bottom. But that you can outsource whatever you can. And I think that's huge. And then when we get to the other end of ask for help, when you're looking at therapists, if you just look, or psychiatrists, if you realize all you're doing is yelling, or you're just so angry you can't take it, or you're super anxious, or you're not sleeping anymore, or you can't eat, or you feel like you can't get out of bed or concentrate enough to do your job, you realize you're doing things over and over and over again. It may be time to check in with someone, and there's nothing wrong with a mental health checkup. We'll get a physical, we'll get our pap smears, we'll get our mammograms, we'll do all that. And I'm a big fan of the mental health checkup. People can always say, hey, you're good. And then on the self-care end, one of the things I tell people is number one, sometimes people get really frustrated or angry at the word self-care. And part of that sometimes is what we want to fix may not be fixed by back in the day going to the spa or something like that. But the thing is you have to schedule that stuff in. A lot of times we'll prioritize things, and when we prioritize them, we put them on our schedule. And for some people, they may not have 20, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours to themselves, but figure out what you can carve and find whatever place in your house you can get it. And I like to tell people, sometimes for some folks, it's the bed, it's the closet or the bathroom are some of the few places they can get a little space. But I like to encourage people, if it's even only 5 minutes, have 5 minutes of the day that you do something you specifically want to do, not something your kids want to do, your husband wants to do, your best friend wants to do, something that you actually want to do for yourself. Because I think it would, oh my Lord Jesus, I can't take this. These slides are giving me life. They're giving me all of my life.
Bonnie is hilarious. She's
I know, she is. And the other thing I think that is simple, but it's a high yield beyond just making a schedule and putting your whole family on it, is that try something new. This is a time where people are really stressed out over feeling out of control, but also out over the potential monotony. I'm an only child, so I'm very easily entertained. And I had the expectation everyone else be entertained like I am. But try something new, be it trying new recipes, looking at the spices or those kitchen appliances you never use, and use those, or come up with something like that that you can actually do with your family. You can look in your closet, do a fashion show, or just randomly wear clothes you've never worn before. No one cares if you show up to a Zoom. Oh, Lord Jesus. These slides are killing me.
Wait. Bonnie, how are you doing this? That's what I need.
That's hilarious.
I need webinar 101 with Bonnie.
I know. But break the monotony. Try new exercises. There's so much content out there. You can try a new game, watch a movie you've been trying to watch, but just try something new. It'll help break up that monotony, because part of it is I feel like people are stressing out over the lack of control, and some folks are getting bored or having difficulty figuring out how to creatively maneuver in this new landscape.
I'll add. Oh, sorry. Who was that?
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Ericka, I definitely echo your importance of me time and just taking care of yourself. For me, I just want to share 2 tips that really work for me during this period. I don't have kids yet, so first, kudos to all the parents, especially moms. You guys are like superheroes. I don't know how you guys do it, but you guys are great. But for me, this pandemic really allowed me to think about myself, and it really turned into like an opportunity for me to really reflect and grow. I had this book, Becoming Michelle Obama. I bought it in Korean because I wanted my mom to read it first, and then so I can read it. It was on my to-do list for the longest time. And during the pandemic, I picked it up because I wanted to read a book, not because it was on my to-do list, a daily to-do list to read 10 pages a day. It wasn't that. I just picked it up because I was tired of watching Netflix and I wanted to read a book. And I read it, and then I was able to talk with my mom about it, and it was just so refreshing. So the fact that I'm doing something because I want to do it, not because it's part of a to-do list or something that I should do, it really was a game changer. So definitely recommend to anyone who hasn't read Becoming Michelle Obama. Great read.
And I have to check that out.
That's awesome. Yeah. I was just going to add, kind of follow up to what Dr. Goodwin said about me time, and to me, it highlights the difference between men and women it was probably like 2 months into this pandemic, and I felt completely burnt out because I was getting up early, working, these long hours, trying to do everything all by myself. And I was on a call with my boss, who's male, and he was like, "Yeah, Diana, it's been great. I've just been going on these bike rides in the middle of the day." And I was like, "You're doing what?" Going on bike rides in the middle of the day. And I was like, hold up. Like, if you're doing that, that means I'm not doing something right. So that was probably mid-May. And mid-May, I started going on runs in the middle of the day, and it was life-changing. And I'm very selfish about my time. I block it off on my calendar. And if people tries to throw an invite for me at like noon, I just decline it. So it's worked for me.
So I have to, I'm a big advocate of moving your body as well.
Yes.
It's really, really important. I know it's helping me keep sane. So I have to share a quote from my favorite movie, and I'm not going to say what movie, but if you recognize it, you're awesome, you rock. So exercise gives you endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Happy people don't just kill their husbands or partner or whoever, you're in a relationship with. But yeah, very important.
Yoon, listen, I love I love that movie. I love you. This is it's fantastic. I need to get better about blocking off my time. I'm not good at that. Like my therapist actually told me to start doing that, marking off the time and having time for myself. And so, I actually wasn't supposed to do anything this week. But you see where I am right now. So I'm going to try that again because it's okay that I was not successful.
And if you get a perm, don't wash your hair.
You never would. You would know that. Oh my God, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. Oh, yes, Betsy. One tip I like, turn on your out of office message, even if you're at home with the kids one afternoon. You don't have to be on vacation to use it. That is very true. That would probably like decrease the anxiety level of missing the emails because you are technically responding to them. Unmute yourself, Betsy.
No, absolutely. No, before the pandemic, it's like if you were home an afternoon, you didn't feel like you could use it. But now there's nowhere to go, so you never get any break. I mean, I'm home at 9 p.m. at night in my home office, feeling like I'm working. And you've got to be able to create boundaries somehow. And the out of office message is one of the few ways we have to do that.
This has been amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Such a phenomenal panel of women. I want to thank the women on the panel. I adore you all. Thank you, Yoon, Dr. Ericka, Sul, Betsy, Diana. Thank you all for being here. Kayla, Tina, Bonnie, and all of GAPABA. Thank you so much. Dr. Ericka, I want to give you a special shout out because you are our mental health specialist here. If you are feeling that you do need some extra help, please do reach out. You can reach Dr. Ericka at Dr. DOCTOR Ericka ERICKA.com. And Ericka, is there another site people can use for you?
Oh, yes. It's askdrgoodwin.com.
Askdrgoodwin.com. Okay. And another thing real quick, because it is 7:00. The Georgia Bar also really cares about your mental health. So the bar offers 6 free counseling sessions. So if you do call them, it is anonymous. It is not reported like on your, I don't know, it's not a transcript. I don't know what we call it, whatever, but it's not reported anywhere for anyone to see. But they will make sure that you get the help that you need, whether that's a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, a counselor. They will get you the help that you do need. So please do not ever suffer alone. And with that, I will turn it over to Kayla Chen. Thank you.
Thank you, Winter. I want to thank all of our panelists again, and Winter especially, who did really the lion's share of putting this incredible panel together and pulling all of these people together on top of managing a household with four children. I really like all of you. I also do not have children, much like Sul. I have enough problems managing my husband and my dog, so I just cannot, my mind would explode. I just wanted, after listening to all of this, I just wanted to add something that my grandmother says often. I'm sure you've all heard this, but Amma always says that just like when you're on the airplane, you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you put on others. I try to remind myself of that regularly. And with that being said, right now, Tina and I do not have any other planned events this year. That may change, much like everything this year. All TBD. We would love to hear from you if you would like to see something else. This community has been really important to us, and I really hope that you have felt supported by us this year. So if you would like to see something, you can reach Tina and I at women@gapaba.org. Also, I want to give a special shout out to our communications team at GAPABA, Prathi and Bonnie, who have done an amazing job, as you can see, with all of our visuals. None of our webinars would run without those two. And so with that, Tina and I thank all of you for being here, and we hope that you are all doing well, and please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.